In a seaside mansion, a lonely businessman celebrates his 70th birthday without a single embrace from his own family. But an unexpected encounter with a humble boy changes the course of his day, and perhaps his life. Through innocent words and sincere gestures, the boy awakens truths that money could never buy. What begins as a simple act of empathy transforms into a new purpose that might rewrite the past. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching. Let's begin. Arthur Peterson's mansion stood imposingly in the Isle of Palms neighborhood, one of Charleston's most exclusive areas. With its 3 floors, Olympic-sized swimming pool, lush gardens, and ocean view, it was the ultimate symbol of the empire built by Arthur Peterson, one of South Carolina's most successful businessmen. At 70 years old, the man who started by selling building materials in a small shop downtown now owned one of the largest networks of material stores and construction companies in the Southeast. That morning, Arthur woke to the soft sound of waves breaking on the beach. His bedroom was on the mansion's upper floor, with large windows that allowed him to observe the Atlantic Ocean in all its immensity. He rose slowly, feeling the weight of the years on his back, and walked to the balcony. The rising sun painted the sea in orange hues, creating a spectacle many would pay fortunes to behold. But for him, that natural beauty no longer caused the same impact as before. Today was his 70th birthday, a date that should be celebrated with a party, family gathered, affectionate hugs, and shared memories. However, what awaited him was just another day of solitude between cold walls and employees who treated him with respect, but maintained the professional distance his years of authoritarianism had imposed. Arthur walked to the bathroom and faced his reflection in the mirror. His grey hair, once as black as night, still held a certain elegance. The wrinkles that marked his face told stories of sleepless nights, tense negotiations, and difficult decisions that led him to the top. His eyes, however, no longer shone as before. They were dull, tired, as if they had seen enough of life. 70 years, he murmured to himself, running a hand over his face. 70 years, and what do I have to show for it? The obvious answer would be his business empire. Peterson Construction was valued in billions. His name was synonymous with success, respected in all business circles across the country. But as he dressed in expensive custom-made clothes, Arthur wondered if all that success had been worth it. He descended the stairs of imported Italian marble and headed to the spacious dining room, where Mrs. Eleanor, the housekeeper who had worked for him for over 3 decades, had prepared breakfast. "Good morning, Mr. Arthur. Happy birthday," said the white-haired lady with a sincere smile, placing a cup of black coffee on the table, exactly as he liked it. "Thank you, Eleanor," he replied, sitting at the head of the enormous rosewood table that easily seated 20 people, a table that, ironically, almost never saw more than a single occupant. "Are you doing anything special today, sir?" she asked as she served some fresh tropical fruits on a porcelain plate. "No, nothing special," Arthur replied, taking his cell phone from his pocket and checking messages. "Nothing but corporate email notifications and bank alerts. No personal messages. No missed calls. Just another day." Mrs. Eleanor gave him a look of compassion that he pretended not to notice. Both knew that his 3 children probably wouldn't call. It wasn't out of malice, he told himself, but because they were busy with their own lives. Thomas, the eldest at 45, was always immersed in business as the company's vice president. Vanessa, the middle child at 42, had lived in France for years, managing Peterson Construction's European branch, but was more interested in fashion shows and Parisian parties. And Edward, the youngest at 38, was still studying in London despite his age, bouncing from one course to another without ever completing any, supported by his father's money. After breakfast, Arthur went to his office. The walls were decorated with diplomas, certificates, business awards, and photos with politicians and celebrities. He sat in his leather armchair and looked at the telephone on his desk. He thought about calling his children, but his pride stopped him. "If they didn't remember, I won't humiliate myself by calling," he thought, as he opened a drawer and took out an old photo album. The yellowed pages held memories of happier times. Photos from when Bernadette, his wife, was still alive, from when the children were small and looked at him with admiration, before money became more important than family ties, before he himself traded time with family for incessant work. Arthur's cell phone vibrated, For a moment his heart raced. Could it be one of his children? But it was just a bank notification about an automatic transfer. He sighed, putting the album away. He decided he wouldn't spend his birthday locked in that house, which felt more like a mausoleum of memories. "Eleanor, I'm going out," he announced, grabbing his car keys. "But lunch is almost ready. Mr. Arthur, I made that moqueca you like. Save it for later. I need some fresh air." Arthur chose not to take the driver. He wanted to drive alone, to feel in control of something at least. His black Mercedes glided silently through the tree-lined streets of Isle of Palms, past modern beachfront buildings and boardwalk kiosks. With no defined destination, he ended up heading downtown, parking near the historic district, an old neighborhood where the city had begun centuries ago. He walked through the cobblestone streets, observing the restored colonial mansions that now housed restaurants, art galleries, and craft shops. The contrast between past and present was on every corner, with historic buildings alongside modern constructions. Ironic, he thought, how his own construction company had contributed to changing Charleston's urban landscape over the decades. His steps led him to Waterfront Park, one of the city's landmarks. The place was full of tourists taking photos and locals enjoying the shade of the trees. Arthur sat on a bench, watching the Ashley River meet the ocean while pleasure boats sailed peacefully. It was then that his eyes fell upon a boy playing alone near the fountain. Barefoot in simple, worn clothes, the boy seemed oblivious to his condition, concentrating on making small paper boats that he set to sail in the fountain's water. There was something in that scene that touched Arthur. The simplicity, perhaps, the ability to find joy in small things. As he watched the boy, Arthur felt a pang in his chest. He remembered his own childhood, when he lived in a simple house in North Charleston and played in the streets with friends. Back then he dreamed of being rich, of having everything he couldn't have, and he achieved it. But at what price? Lost in thought, Arthur didn't notice silent tears streaming down his face. It was then that he felt someone approach and, looking sideways, saw the same boy he had been watching, now standing in front of him, looking at him with curiosity. "Are you okay, sir?" the boy asked in a sweet, concerned voice. Arthur quickly wiped away his tears, embarrassed to be caught in a moment of weakness. "Yes, I'm fine, little one," he replied, trying to smile, but something in his eyes betrayed his sadness. The boy, without hesitation, came closer and sat beside Arthur on the bench. "You're sad, aren't you? My mom used to say that when someone is sad on their birthday, it's because no one remembered to wish them well." Arthur was surprised. How could this boy know that? How could he know something so intimate, something he tried to hide even from himself? "How do you know it's my birthday?" he asked, intrigued. The boy pointed to Arthur's wrist. "You're wearing a hospital bracelet. My mom worked in a hospital and told me that when people have tests on their birthday, they put on a special little bracelet." Arthur looked at his wrist and saw the bracelet from the medical checkup he'd had the previous week, which he hadn't yet removed. His name and date of birth were on the bracelet. The boy's perceptiveness surprised him. "You're observant," he commented with a more genuine smile. "What's your name?" "Lucas," the boy replied, extending his small, dirty hand for a formal handshake that seemed amusing coming from someone so young. "And yours, sir?" "Arthur," he replied, gently shaking the boy's hand. "Nice to meet you, Lucas." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Arthur," Lucas replied with a politeness that contrasted with his humble appearance. "How old are you today, sir?" 70, Arthur answered. Lucas's eyes widened in amazement. "Wow, you're really old, aren't you? My mom used to say that very old people have many stories to tell." Arthur couldn't help but laugh at the child's sincerity. "Yes, I have many stories. Some good, some not so good." "Can you tell me one?" Lucas asked, settling more comfortably on the bench as if preparing to listen to a long narrative. Something in the simplicity of that request touched Arthur deeply. When was the last time someone had shown genuine interest in listening to him, not as the successful businessman, but as a person? He couldn't even remember. "Well, where to begin?" Arthur said, thinking of a story that might interest a boy. "Did you know I was once poor like you?" "You? Poor? But you look rich!" Lucas exclaimed, looking at Arthur's well-cut clothes and expensive watch. "Now I am, but it wasn't always like that. When I was about your age, I sold popsicles on the beaches of Isle of Palms to help my mother." Lucas listened attentively, as Arthur told him about his difficult childhood, about how he started working early, about the sacrifices he made to study at night while working during the day. The boy asked intelligent questions, showing surprising maturity for his age. "And your family? Didn't they come to celebrate your birthday?" Lucas suddenly asked. The question hit Arthur like a punch to the stomach. "No," he answered dryly. "They're busy." "Too busy for a birthday?" Lucas questioned, with the typical frankness of children. "My mom always said you should never be too busy to celebrate the life of someone you love." Arthur felt a lump in his throat. That boy, with his simple wisdom, had just exposed the sad reality of his life. "Your mom seems like a wise woman," he commented, trying to change the subject. "Is she around?" Lucas's smile disappeared, replaced by a sad expression that didn't suit his childlike face. "She passed away 2 years ago," he replied, looking at the ground. Arthur understood what that meant. "I'm sorry," he said, feeling suddenly connected to the boy by the shared experience of loss. "It's okay," Lucas replied, lifting his face with a brave smile. "My mom used to say that when people leave, they keep living in our hearts. I feel her with me every day." Again, Arthur was surprised by the maturity and resilience of that child. "And your father?" he asked, curious about the boy's situation. "My dad's name is Andrew Miller. He used to work in a construction factory, but after my mom passed, he got very sad. Now he works collecting cans and cardboard." The name sounded vaguely familiar to Arthur, but he couldn't quite remember where he knew it from. He had had so many employees over the years. "And where do you live, Lucas?" "Over there," the boy replied, pointing in an indefinite direction. "In a small house near the river. Sometimes when it rains a lot, the water comes in. But my dad put some high bricks so our bed wouldn't get wet." The simple description of the precariousness in which he lived contrasted with the dignity and joy the boy showed. Arthur felt a mixture of admiration and sadness. "Shouldn't you be in school at this hour?" he asked, realizing it was a weekday. "No school today. The teacher got sick, and there was no one to substitute," Lucas explained. "I like school. I want to be an engineer when I grow up, to build houses that don't let water in when it rains." Arthur smiled at the irony. He, one of the greatest builders in the southeast, talking to a boy who dreamed of building better houses than the precarious dwelling he lived in. "Engineering is a good choice," he commented. "I'm an engineer, you know." Lucas's eyes lit up. "Really? You build houses?" "I build houses, buildings, bridges, roads." "Wow. So you're very important?" Lucas exclaimed with genuine admiration. Arthur felt a pang of shame. Important? Yes, to the business world perhaps, but to the people who should really care about him, not so much. As they talked, Lucas's stomach audibly rumbled. The boy blushed, embarrassed. "Are you hungry?" Arthur asked. Lucas hesitated but then nodded. "A little bit. Didn't have time for breakfast today. Dad left early for work." "Come," Arthur said, standing up. "Let's get something to eat." They walked to a nearby restaurant, a simple but clean establishment that served typical South Carolina food. Arthur ordered a plate of tapioca with cheese for Lucas and a coffee for himself. The boy ate with such relish that Arthur found himself ordering more dishes: grits with egg, fried yucca, roll cake. Lucas accepted everything with a huge smile, thanking for each new dish as if it were the most precious gift in the world. "Thank you, Mr. Arthur," Lucas said, after finishing his meal. "That was the best breakfast of my life." Something in that sincere gratitude touched Arthur deeply. He, who was used to receiving formal thanks from employees and business partners, felt truly appreciated perhaps for the first time in many years. "You're welcome." "Lucas," he replied with a genuine smile, "that's the least I can do on my birthday." "Wait," Lucas exclaimed suddenly, searching his worn shorts pockets. "I have a present for you." Arthur watched curious as the boy pulled a small package wrapped in brown paper from his pocket. "It's a piece of bread with chocolate that I saved for later, but I want to give it to you as a birthday present," Lucas said, extending the package with pride. "It's not much, but I made it with love." Arthur felt a lump in his throat. Here was a boy who practically had nothing, offering him the little he possessed, while his own children, who had everything, hadn't even remembered the date. With slightly trembling hands, Arthur took the improvised gift. "Thank you, Lucas. This is the most special gift I've ever received," and, to his own surprise, he realized he was speaking the truth. After breakfast, Arthur and Lucas walked through the historic district, The businessman was surprised by the boy's knowledge of the city's history. Lucas told stories he had learned in school and from his mother, who loved to stroll through those historic streets on her rare days off. "My mom used to say that those who don't know the past don't understand the present," Lucas commented, pointing to Waterfront Park. "She worked a lot but always found time to bring me here on Sundays." "Your mom seems to have been a very special woman," Arthur commented, increasingly interested in the story of that boy who, despite his young age and difficulties, showed so much intelligence and sensitivity. "She was the best mom in the world," Lucas replied, his eyes shining with pride. "She worked as a cleaner in a hospital, but knew more than many doctors. She read a lot, you know, always said books are windows to other worlds." As Lucas spoke about his mother, Arthur observed the boy's gestures and expressions. There was a maturity in him that was uncommon in children his age, a wisdom born of adversity, perhaps. "Mary Helen, my mom, always told me that we can be poor in money, but rich in spirit," Lucas continued, sitting on a park bench. "She taught me that respect and kindness cost nothing, but are worth a lot." Arthur felt a pang of shame. He, who had so much, had never passed on values like these to his children. On the contrary, his example had been to prioritize material success above all else, and the result was there in the form of 3 distant children who were only interested in his money. "And your father? What's he like?" Arthur asked, trying to complete the puzzle of the boy's life. Lucas was silent for a few moments, as if organizing his thoughts. "My dad is a good man who had bad luck in life," he finally replied. "He used to work in a big factory, earned well, we had a nice house in West Ashley. But then he was accused of theft and lost his job." Arthur's heart raced. The mention of a theft accusation at a factory made him start to connect the dots. "You said your dad's name is Andrew Miller, right? What kind of factory did he work in?" "A construction materials factory. He was the warehouse supervisor. He controlled everything that came in and out." Lucas looked at Arthur with curiosity. "Why do you want to know?" Arthur tried to hide his sudden interest. "Just curious." "Keep telling me about him." "After he lost his job, it was very difficult to find work. No one wants to hire someone who was accused of theft, even if there's no proof. My dad started doing odd jobs, working in construction as a helper, but the money wasn't enough. We had to sell our house and move to a simpler place. And when your mum passed, things got even harder," Arthur completed, understanding the situation. Lucas nodded. "My dad got very sad. He loved my mom very much. Now he drinks sometimes to forget the sadness. But he's good to me, never lets me go hungry, always finds a way." The story touched Arthur deeply. There was something in that account that bothered him, as if an important piece of the puzzle was missing. He tried to search his memory, trying to remember an employee named Andrew Miller, but couldn't. Perhaps he needed to check the company records. "Lucas, it's getting late." "Your dad must be worried about you," Arthur said, looking at his watch. "He only comes back at night," Lucas replied. "Sometimes I'm alone all day. But I'm not scared, I'm used to it." The idea of such a young child spending days alone on the street bothered Arthur. "Don't you have other relatives? Aunts, uncles, grandparents?" Lucas shook his head negatively. "My mom's family is all from the countryside, and we lost touch. And my dad doesn't have anyone else." Arthur made an impulsive decision. "How about you come see my house? We can have lunch there, and then if you want, I can take you home." Lucas's eyes lit up. "Really? You live in a palace?" Arthur laughed. "It's not quite a palace, but it's a big house, yes. Can I go?" "I promise I won't cause any trouble." "Of course you can. Come on, my car is parked nearby." As they walked to the car, Arthur found himself thinking about how quickly he had connected with that boy. There was something about Lucas that filled a void he didn't even know existed. Perhaps it was his sincerity, his ability to find joy in small things, or simply the fact that he treated him like a person, not like the powerful businessman everyone feared or flattered. When they reached the black Mercedes, Lucas gasped. "Wow, what a beautiful car. It looks like something from a movie." Arthur smiled, opening the door for the boy. "Get in, let's go for a ride." During the drive, Lucas kept asking questions about the car, about the city, about Arthur's life. His curiosity was insatiable, and Arthur found himself answering with patience and even a certain pleasure. It was good to talk like this without pretensions, without ulterior motives. When they arrived at the mansion in Isle of Palms, Lucas fell silent, observing the imposing iron gate that opened automatically, revealing the well-kept gardens and the main house in the background. "Do you live here alone, sir?" he asked as the car drove up the tree-lined driveway. "Yes, just with the staff," Arthur replied, parking in front of the main entrance. "It's too big for just one person," Lucas commented, with the typical sincerity of children. "Aren't you afraid of ghosts?" Arthur laughed. "I never thought about it, but you're right. Sometimes it feels like only ghosts live here." As they entered the mansion, Mrs. Eleanor appeared in the hall, surprised to see her employer accompanied by an unknown boy. "Eleanor, this is Lucas, my friend. He's having lunch with us today," Arthur announced. "Nice to meet you." "Mrs. Eleanor," Lucas said, extending his hand politely. The housekeeper smiled, charmed by the boy's manners, despite his simple clothes and humble appearance. "The pleasure is mine, Lucas. Welcome to the Peterson home." "Is the moqueca still available?" Arthur asked. "Yes, sir. I can serve it whenever you wish." "Great. Lucas, how about we see the house before lunch?" The boy's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Can I really?" "Of course. I'll show you everything." Over the next 2 hours, Arthur guided Lucas through every room of the mansion. The boy was amazed by everything: the enormous swimming pool, the private cinema room, the library with thousands of books, the winter garden. But what impressed him most was the ocean view from the main bedroom's balcony. "It's like the sea is yours," he exclaimed, leaning on the railing and feeling the sea breeze on his face. "No one owns the sea. Lucas, it belongs to everyone and to no one," Arthur replied, standing beside the boy. "But you can see it every day at any time. That's almost like owning it." The simple yet profound observation made Arthur reflect. Indeed, he had the privilege of contemplating that beauty whenever he wished, but rarely did. The view that so many would envy had become just another unimportant detail in his life. "Do you like the sea?" Arthur asked. "Very much. My mom used to take me to the beach when she could. She said the sea washes our soul." "Your mom was a wise woman," Arthur commented. "After lunch we can go down to the beach, if you'd like." Lucas's smile was so genuine that Arthur felt a wave of affection he hadn't experienced in a long time. During lunch, Mrs. Eleanor observed with curiosity the interaction between her employer and the boy. Arthur, always so serious and reserved, talked animatedly, laughed at Lucas's stories, and showed genuine interest in what the boy had to say. It was as if a younger, lighter version of Arthur had emerged, someone she had never known in all her years of working in that house. "Mrs. Eleanor, you cook wonderfully," Lucas complimented, after devouring 2 portions of moqueca. "My mom also made moqueca, but not as delicious as yours." The housekeeper smiled, grateful for the sincere compliment. "Thank you, my dear. I'm glad you liked it." "You're very lucky, Mr. Arthur, to eat such good food every day," Lucas commented. "I certainly am," Arthur agreed, realizing how he had stopped appreciating simple things like a good meal. "But today I'm even luckier to have your company." After lunch, as promised, they went down to the beach in front of the mansion. Lucas ran on the sand, swam in the sea, and built sandcastles, while Arthur watched him from the shade of a palm tree. There was something liberating in seeing the boy's simple joy. His ability to marvel at things most people, including himself, no longer noticed. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in orange hues, Arthur called Lucas. "It's getting late. I'd better take you home before your dad worries." Lucas's smile disappeared for an instant, but soon returned. "Okay, thank you for the day, Mr. Arthur. It was the best day of my life." "It was a special day for me too, Lucas," Arthur replied, surprised to realize he was speaking the truth. "Where exactly do you live?" Lucas explained the way to his house, located in a poor community on the banks of the Ashley River. During the journey, the contrast between Charleston's neighborhoods became evident, leaving the luxurious Isle of Palms waterfront, passing through the commercial center, until they reached the periphery, where simple and often precarious houses were crowded together. "It's here, Mr. Arthur," Lucas indicated, when they reached a narrow alley where the luxury car looked completely out of place. "I'll walk you home," Arthur said, turning off the engine and getting out of the car. "You don't have to. Sir, you'll get your nice shoes dirty." "It's no problem. I want to meet your father." Lucas seemed to hesitate. He might not be home yet, or he might be asleep." Arthur understood the boy's hesitation. He was probably ashamed of the humble conditions he lived in, or perhaps worried that his father was intoxicated. As he had mentioned earlier, it's okay. Lucas, I don't need to go inside, but I'd like to drop you at the door to make sure you got home safely. They walked down the dirt alley, past simple houses built with various materials, many clearly self-built. Children played in the street, some barefoot. Adults talked at their doorsteps, curiously observing the elegant man accompanying Lucas. Finally, they arrived at a small, unplastered masonry house with asbestos tiles. The door was just an improvised plastic curtain. "This is where I live," Lucas said with a mixture of shame and resignation. Arthur felt a tightening in his chest. The difference between the mansion where he lived and that small, precarious dwelling was an abyss that represented the inequality of the United States, that he knew well, but preferred to ignore. "Dad?" Lucas called, pulling aside the curtain. "Is anyone home?" There was no answer. They entered a room that served as both living room and kitchen. A small two-burner stove, a table with 3 mismatched chairs, an old sofa, and an old television made up the furniture. In the background, another curtain separated what was supposed to be the bedroom. "Looks like he's not back yet," Lucas commented. "But it's okay, I'm used to being alone." The naturalness with which the boy accepted that situation broke Arthur's heart. "Is there food at home?" he asked. Lucas went to a small cabinet and opened the door. There were few items, some packages of instant noodles, flour, a little coffee. "Yes, there is. And the lady gave me that packed meal, remember?" Indeed, Mrs. Eleanor had prepared a generous packed meal for Lucas to take home, in addition to packing some sweets and fruits. "Lucas, can I visit you again?" Arthur asked, already at the door. The boy's eyes lit up. "Of course. I'd really like that." Arthur took a business card from his pocket and handed it to Lucas. "This is my phone number. If you need anything, you can call me any time." Lucas took the card as if it were a precious treasure. "Thank you, Mr. Arthur. You're the nicest person I've ever met." Arthur was surprised to feel his eyes well up. "See you soon, Lucas, and thank you for making my birthday special." On the way back home, Arthur couldn't stop thinking about Lucas and his situation. The boy had touched something deep within him, awakened feelings he thought were extinct. Compassion, empathy, genuine affection. And there was also that unease about the boy's father, Andrew Miller, and the story of the theft accusation. Upon arriving home, Arthur went straight to his office and called Roger Allen, his human resources director for over 2 decades. "Roger, I need you to check something for me urgently," Arthur said as soon as the director answered. "I want information about a former employee named Andrew Miller. He must have worked with us some years ago, probably in the warehouse area." "I can check first thing tomorrow morning, Dr. Arthur. Is there any specific information you're looking for?" "Everything. I want to know when he worked with us, at which unit, why he left, if there were any disciplinary occurrences. Everything you can find." "Understood. I'll send you a full report tomorrow." After hanging up, Arthur was thoughtful. Why was he so interested in the story of that former employee? What did he expect to discover? Perhaps it was just the desire to help Lucas in some way, or perhaps there was something more, something his conscience was trying to tell him. That night, for the first time in a long time, Arthur didn't take his usual sleeping pill. His mind was occupied with thoughts about the unusual day he had had, about the boy who had entered his life so unexpectedly, and about the mystery surrounding his father. He was almost falling asleep when his cell phone rang. He looked at the clock, 11:17 p.m. Who would call at that hour? Picking up the device, he saw Thomas, his eldest son, on the screen. His heart raced. Could it be that Thomas had remembered his birthday, even if late? "Hello," he answered, trying not to show anxiety. "Dad, I just saw on my calendar that today's your birthday," Thomas said, his voice indicating he was in a noisy environment. "Sorry I didn't call earlier. I'm in a business meeting in Atlanta." "It's okay, son," Arthur replied, trying to hide his disappointment. A business meeting at 11 p.m. on a Saturday? It was such an obvious excuse that it wasn't even worth questioning. 70 years, huh? Important number. Next year we'll organize something special. What do you think? "You don't need to worry, Thomas. I had a good day." And to his surprise, he realized he really had. "Great. Look, I need to hang up now. We'll talk better tomorrow, okay? Happy birthday, Dad." And before Arthur could even reply, the call ended. He put the cell phone back on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. Thomas's quick formal call contrasted sharply with the warm day he had spent with Lucas. His biological son, to whom he had given everything, could barely spare 5 minutes of his time, while a boy he had just met had offered him an entire day of genuine attention and even shared the little he had. What did that say about him as a father? What did it say about the values he had instilled in his children? And what did it say about the society he had helped build? A society where the disparity between those who have much and those who have almost nothing was so glaring. With these thoughts, Arthur finally fell asleep, dreaming of beaches, sandcastles, and a boy with an easy smile who, in a single day, had transformed his perspective on life. The next morning, Arthur woke with an energy he hadn't felt in years. He took a long shower, shaved carefully, and chose more informal clothes than his usual well-cut suit. Descending for breakfast, he surprised Mrs. Eleanor with his good humor. "Good morning, Eleanor." "The coffee smells wonderfully well," he greeted, sitting at the table with a smile. The housekeeper observed him with curiosity. "You seem quite cheerful today, sir." "I am," Arthur confirmed, serving himself some tapioca. "I think I had one of the best birthdays of my life yesterday." "Because of the boy?" Eleanor asked, placing the coffee pot on the table. "Lucas," Arthur corrected. "Yes, I think he reminded me of things I had forgotten. How good it is to talk without ulterior motives. How comforting sincerity is." Mrs. Eleanor smiled, pleased to see her employer lighter. "He is a special boy. Polite, intelligent, but his situation seems difficult." "It's very difficult," Arthur confirmed, his expression becoming more serious. "I'm thinking about how I can help him." "You have a good heart." "Mr. Arthur, I always knew that, even when you try to hide it." Arthur smiled, grateful for his housekeeper's sincere comment, one of the few people who truly knew him beyond appearances and social standing. After breakfast, he went to his office and called Roger Allen again. "Have you got the information I asked for?" he inquired as soon as the director answered. "I'm working on it, Dr. Arthur. I found some initial records, but since it's a former employee from some years ago, I'm having to consult the physical archives. I can bring the information to your house in person later today if you prefer." "Yes, do that. I'll be waiting." While waiting, Arthur decided to do something he hadn't done in a long time: walk on the beach. He descended the steps of his property that led directly to the sand and began to walk barefoot along the shore, feeling the texture of the grains between his toes, something he had forgotten how pleasurable it was. His thoughts were on Lucas. The boy's joy in playing on that same beach the day before had been contagious. How could someone who had so little be so happy? And how could he, Arthur, who had so much, feel so empty most of the time? Upon returning home, he found his car in the garage with mud on its wheels. He remembered the alley where Lucas lived and felt a pang in his chest, thinking about the precarious conditions in which the boy lived. What would it be like to grow up in a place like that, without the opportunities and comfort his own children had always had? Around noon, Roger Allen arrived. The HR director, a middle-aged man with grey hair and thin-rimmed glasses, seemed nervous, which was unusual. "Good morning, Dr. Arthur," he greeted, entering the office with a folder in his hand. "I brought the information you requested about Andrew Miller." "Excellent, Roger. Sit down and tell me what you've discovered." Roger adjusted his glasses, visibly uncomfortable. "Well, Andrew Miller worked for our company for almost 10 years. He started as a warehouse assistant and on merit rose to supervisor. He was assigned to the North End factory. He was considered an exemplary employee with consistently positive evaluations." "And what happened for him to leave the company?" Arthur asked, though he already suspected the answer. Roger took a deep breath before continuing. "He was dismissed for just cause in 2018. The accusation was embezzlement of materials from the warehouse. Apparently, items of significant value were missing from inventory, and as he was responsible, were there concrete proofs against him?" Roger hesitated. "Well, there were indications. The internal audit identified the shortages, and as supervisor, the responsibility fell on him, but—" He paused as if unsure whether to continue. "But," Arthur encouraged. "But I always found the case strange," Roger admitted. "Andrew had an impeccable record. There had never been any suspicion about him before. And he vehemently denied the accusation, claimed he was being framed. He asked for a more thorough investigation, but But what, Roger? Speak frankly. But the order to dismiss him immediately came from above. From Dr. Thomas, specifically. He said he had irrefutable evidence of Andrew's guilt and that he didn't want thieves working in the company. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. His son Thomas had directly interfered in the case. Why? And you didn't find that strange at the time? Roger seemed even more uncomfortable. To be honest, Dr. Arthur, I did. But Dr. Thomas was taking on more responsibilities in the company. You were stepping back to take care of Mrs. Bernadette's health. I felt it wasn't my place to question board decisions. Arthur nodded, understanding the difficult position Roger had found himself in. I see. Is there anything else you can tell me about the case? Well, after his dismissal, Andrew tried several times to speak with you personally. He said he had been wronged, that he could prove his innocence. But as you were focused on caring for your wife, he never got an audience. Eventually, he gave up. Arthur felt the weight of guilt on his shoulders. He vaguely remembered messages about a former employee who insisted on speaking with him. But at the time, with Bernadette in her final stages, he had delegated all business matters to Thomas. There's one more thing, Dr. Arthur, Roger continued. A few weeks after Andrew's dismissal, I received a visit from his wife, Mary Helen. She was very distressed, said the unjust dismissal had destroyed the family's life, that Andrew couldn't get a job because of the theft accusation, that they were losing their home. And what did you do? Arthur asked, fearing the answer. I reported the visit to Dr. Thomas, as was protocol. He told me not to worry, that the case was closed and that I shouldn't receive Andrew's wife again if she returned. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, processing that information. The story was beginning to make sense, and it was not pleasant at all. Roger, I need you to do something for me, Arthur said, after a few moments of silence. I want a complete audit of the warehouse's inbound and outbound records at the North End factory for the period when Andrew was dismissed. I want to know exactly what went missing, when it went missing, and especially if there was any pattern or anomaly in the records. That will require a dedicated team, Dr. Arthur, and it could raise delicate questions, considering Dr. Thomas was directly involved in the case. I know. But I want the truth, Roger, whatever the cost. Assemble the team you need, but keep this absolutely confidential for now. Report directly to me and only to me. Understood? Yes, sir. I'll start immediately. After Roger left, Arthur was alone with his thoughts. The suspicion that had begun to form in his mind was disturbing. What if Thomas, his own son, had unjustly framed Andrew Miller? What if the theft accusation was false? He decided he needed more information before confronting Thomas. And above all, he felt he needed to see Lucas again. That boy, unknowingly, had triggered a series of events that could change many lives, including his own. Arthur picked up the phone and called a trusted private investigator, Sebastian Reynolds, a former police chief who had already provided services to the company in delicate cases. Sebastian, I need urgent and discreet service, Arthur said as soon as the investigator answered. I want detailed information about the current situation of a man named Andrew Miller and his son Lucas. They live in a community on the banks of the Ashley River. I can start today? Dr. Arthur, what kind of information are you specifically looking for? Everything. Living conditions, routine, financial situation, health, relationships, legal problems, outstanding issues. I want a complete profile, but I want it to be absolutely discreet. They cannot know they are being investigated. Understood. In 48 hours, I should have a preliminary report for you. After hanging up, Arthur felt restless. A part of him wanted to go immediately to Lucas's house, see how the boy was doing, perhaps invite him to spend the day again. But another part knew he needed to be cautious. If his suspicions were correct, the situation was much more complex than it initially seemed. To his surprise, the phone rang again. It was Vanessa, his daughter, who lived in France. "Daddy, happy birthday," she said with the cheerful voice he knew well, the one she used when she wanted something. "Sorry I didn't call yesterday. I was at an important fashion show in Paris and completely out of time." "Thank you, Vanessa," Arthur replied, trying not to sound as skeptical as he felt. "How are things in Paris?" "Wonderful as always. But I'm calling about an important matter, Daddy. Remember that European branch expansion project we discussed a few months ago? Well, I found a perfect property for our new headquarters, but we need to act fast. I'll send you the full project by email. That's just a few million euros, nothing that would significantly affect the company's cash flow. Arthur sighed internally. Typical Vanessa, always thinking of grand expenses without considering the financial implications. Vanessa, at the moment I'm reviewing several aspects of the company. We'll postpone this decision until I can analyze the project calmly. But Dad, it's a unique opportunity. If we don't close it soon, another buyer will... I said we'll postpone it, Vanessa, Arthur interrupted firmly. And since you called, I'll take the opportunity to let you know that I'll be visiting the French branch in the coming weeks. I want to personally see how operations are going there. There was silence on the other end of the line. Visit? But you never come to Paris. Well, now I will. I'm re-evaluating several things in my life and in the company. Advise your team to prepare a complete report of operations, revenues, expenses, ongoing projects. I want everything in the smallest detail. Dad, are you okay? You sound different. I'm great, Vanessa. Better than I've been in a long time, actually. Now I need to hang up. I have urgent matters to resolve. We'll talk soon. After ending the call, Arthur felt a growing determination. The encounter with Lucas had awakened something within him, a desire to correct wrongs, to seek justice, to truly make a difference in people's lives, not just accumulate wealth. In the afternoon, Arthur decided to visit the North End factory where Andrew had worked. He arrived unannounced, causing a stir among the employees who were not accustomed to visits from the owner. He walked through the warehouses, observing the processes, talking to the workers, asking about working conditions, about the organizational climate. Arriving at the warehouse, he introduced himself to the current supervisor, Josiah Clarkson, a man of approximately 50, who had worked for the company for over 2 decades. Mr. Clarkson, I would like to speak with you about a delicate matter, Arthur said, when they were alone in the supervisor's office. Do you remember Andrew Miller, who worked here until 2018? Josiah seemed surprised by the question. Of course I remember him. Andrew was my colleague. We worked together in the warehouse before he was promoted to supervisor. And what do you think about his case? About the theft accusation? Josiah hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Dr. Arthur, with all due respect, I don't know if I should comment on that. Please, Josiah. I need to know the truth. I promise nothing you say here will harm you in any way. The supervisor took a deep breath. Well, if you want my honest opinion, I never believed Andrew was capable of stealing. He was an honest, dedicated man. He loved the company, always said he was grateful for the opportunity you had given him. So you think he was wronged? Josiah was silent for a few moments, as if carefully weighing his words. I believe so, Doctor. At the time, there was much talk that the audit was rushed, that it wasn't thoroughly investigated. And there were rumors. What kind of rumors? Arthur asked, leaning forward. Rumors that someone powerful wanted Andrew out, that the theft accusation was just an excuse. Someone powerful like whom? Arthur pressed, although he already suspected the answer. I wouldn't want to make accusations without proof, Dr. Arthur. I understand. And after Andrew was dismissed, did you keep in touch with him? Initially, yes. I tried to help him find another job, gave references, but it was difficult. The theft accusation stained his reputation. Eventually, we lost contact. I heard he went through difficulties, that his wife got sick. A sad story. Arthur nodded, feeling the weight of guilt grow even heavier. Thank you for your sincerity, Josiah. This will stay between us, but I want you to know that I am investigating this case. If you remember any detail that might be relevant, please contact me directly. Leaving the factory, Arthur was determined to uncover the full truth. If Andrew Miller had been wronged, if his family had suffered from a false accusation, he had a moral duty to correct that error, regardless of who was involved. On the way back home, his cell phone rang. It was Edward, his youngest son. Dad, everything okay? Thomas told me you're asking a lot of questions about old company cases. Any problem? Arthur realized that the news of his factory visit had already reached Thomas, who had probably alerted Edward. I'm just reviewing some processes, Edward. Nothing to worry about. I see. Look, Dad, I'm just calling because Thomas seems worried. He said you might be influenced by someone with ulterior motives. Is it true you were with a street kid yesterday? Arthur felt his blood boil. First, Lucas is not a street kid. He's an intelligent and polite boy who is going through difficulties. Second, what I do or don't do is none of Thomas's business nor yours. And third, yes, I'm reviewing some old cases, because I have reasons to believe that injustices may have occurred under your brother's command. Calm down, Dad. I'm just relaying what Thomas told me. You know how protective he is of the company, of the family legacy. Legacy? Arthur interrupted with a bitter laugh. What legacy, Edward? Money? Power? Is that what you call legacy? Because if it is, let me tell you, it's a very poor legacy. Dad, you're acting strange. I think we should talk in person. I can catch a flight to Charleston tomorrow. It's not necessary, Edward. I'm perfectly fine. Just seeing some things more clearly now. By the way, since you called, I'll take the opportunity to inform you that I'm planning some significant changes in the company and in the distribution of my assets. Changes? What kind of changes? You'll know soon. Now I need to hang up. I have important matters to resolve. After ending the call, Arthur knew he had set off an alarm among his children. Thomas, especially, must have been in a panic at the prospect of an investigation into Andrew Miller's case. If his suspicions were correct, his son had a lot to hide. Upon arriving home, Arthur went straight to his office and began drafting instructions for his trusted lawyer, Dr. Maurice Holland. He wanted to initiate the process of altering his will and the corporate structure of his companies. He didn't know exactly how things would unfold in the coming days, but he was determined to correct past mistakes and ensure a fairer future for all involved. While writing, he received a call from Sebastian, the private investigator. Dr. Arthur, I have some preliminary information about Andrew Miller. The situation is worse than we imagined. The man has been unemployed for months, has drinking problems, and apparently has a significant debt with local loan sharks. The boy Lucas often stays alone for days, practically fending for himself. The neighborhood says that the father, despite his problems, has never been aggressive with his son, but his ability to care for the child is clearly compromised. And what about their health? The boy seems healthy, considering the circumstances, but the father has liver problems probably related to alcoholism. There are reports that he's been hospitalized a few times in recent months. Arthur felt his heart clench. I see. Continue the investigation, Sebastian. I want detailed information about these debts, about Andrew's legal situation, about everything. There's one more thing. Dr. Arthur, I found out that the boy is enrolled in Charleston Elementary School, but he's been missing a lot of classes lately. The teachers are worried. They say he's extremely intelligent, but his living conditions are affecting his performance. This information was the last straw for Arthur. Lucas, a boy with so much potential, was losing opportunities because of an injustice that possibly had been committed by his own family. Thank you, Sebastian. Keep me informed of any news. After hanging up, Arthur made an impulsive decision, but one he felt was absolutely right. He picked up the phone and called Dr. Maurice. Maurice, in addition to the changes to the will and corporate structure I mentioned, I want you to prepare the documents to initiate an adoption process. Adoption, Dr. Arthur? The lawyer asked, clearly surprised. Are you thinking of adopting a child? Yes, a 6-year-old boy named Lucas Miller. His situation is complicated. His father has health and financial problems. I know it won't be a simple process, but I want you to start checking all the legal requirements. Dr. Arthur, with all due respect, this is a very serious step. Are you sure? And what about your children? Are they aware of this decision? They are not. And honestly, at the moment, it doesn't matter to me. I saw something in Lucas Morris, something that reminded me of what is truly important in life. That boy has incredible potential that is being wasted because of circumstances that, in part, were caused by my own family. I want to give him the opportunities he deserves. I understand your feelings, Doctor, but adoption is not a simple process, especially when the child has a living biological father. We would need to prove that the father is unfit, that he cannot care for his child, and even then, there's a whole process of parental rights termination that can be long and complicated. Do whatever is necessary, Maurice. Use all available resources. Money is not an issue. Money doesn't buy everything, Dr. Arthur, especially in the judicial system. But I will do my best. I will start preparing the documents and studying the case. We will need detailed information about the child, About the biological father, social. Reports. I have an investigator gathering that information. I will also contact the boys' school. I want this process to be as swift as possible, Maurice. I feel I cannot lose time. After hanging up, Arthur felt a strange sensation, a mixture of determination, anxiety, and, surprisingly, hope. For the first time in many years, he felt he was doing something truly significant, something that transcended the accumulation of wealth and power. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. His children would certainly oppose the idea of adopting Lucas, seeing him as a threat to their inheritance. The truth about Andrew Miller's case, if confirmed, could cause an earthquake in the family and the company. But Arthur was willing to face all of it. For Lucas, for justice, and perhaps for redemption. That night, as he contemplated the ocean from his bedroom balcony, Arthur found himself smiling as he remembered Lucas's words about the sea. "It's like the sea is yours." The boy didn't know it, but he had given Arthur something far more valuable than any property or privileged view. He had given him a new purpose. With that certainty in his heart, Arthur went to sleep, determined to visit Lucas again the next day and to begin a new phase in his life, a phase of correcting errors and building genuine bonds. The next morning, Arthur woke up determined. After breakfast, he asked Mrs. Eleanor to prepare a basket of food and, with the housekeeper's help, selected some clothes and toys that might suit Lucas. They weren't new items, but well-preserved pieces that had belonged to his children and were stored in the mansion's attic. "Are you visiting the boy?" Eleanor asked as she organized the provisions in the basket. "Yes, Eleanor. I'm worried about him." The housekeeper smiled, pleased. "That's good, Mr. Arthur. That boy touched your heart, didn't he? It's been so long since I've seen you so animated about something." Arthur nodded, acknowledging his faithful employee's accurate observation. "He reminded me of important things, Eleanor. How life can be simple and yet complete." Before leaving, he received a call from Roger Allen. "Dr. Arthur, we are making progress on the audit you requested. We found some inconsistencies in the warehouse's inbound and outbound records around the time of Andrew Miller's dismissal." "What kind of inconsistencies?" "There are records of valuable materials leaving without proper destination documentation. And strangest of all, these exits were not recorded by Andrew, but by another employee, Mark Davis, who worked directly for Dr. Thomas at the time." Arthur felt a shiver run down his spine. The confirmation of his suspicions was materializing. "Continue the investigation, Roger. I want to know where these materials went, who authorized the exits, everything. And keep this absolutely confidential." After hanging up, Arthur was thoughtful. The situation was even worse than he imagined. If Thomas was indeed involved in a scheme to embezzle materials and had used Andrew as a scapegoat, this was not just an injustice, but a criminal act that had destroyed a family's life. With these disturbing thoughts, Arthur drove to the community where Lucas lived. The contrast between luxurious Isle of Palms and that needy area was stark. And he wondered how he had spent so many years ignoring this reality, so geographically close, yet so socially distant. Upon reaching the alley where Lucas's house was located, Arthur noticed a commotion. Several people were gathered in front of the small dwelling, and there was a tense atmosphere. He parked his car and approached, carrying the basket of provisions. "What's going on?" he asked an elderly woman who was observing the scene. "It's Mr. Andrew," she replied with a worried expression. "The loan sharks came to collect his debt and threatened to take the few pieces of furniture he has. The boy is inside, poor thing, scared." Arthur felt his blood boil. Without a second thought, he pushed his way through the crowd and entered the house. Inside, he found two menacing-looking men, intimidating a visibly debilitated Andrew Miller, while Lucas, huddled in a corner, watched everything with wide, fearful eyes. "What's happening here?" Arthur asked, with the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. Everyone turned to him, surprised by the presence of a well-dressed man in that environment. "And who are you?" one of the men asked in a challenging tone. "My name is Arthur Peterson. I am a friend of the family, and I would like to know what the problem is." Upon hearing the name, Andrew Miller looked at Arthur with a mixture of surprise and distrust. Lucas, on the other hand, ran to hug the businessman. "Mr. Arthur, you really came," the boy exclaimed, clinging to Arthur's legs as if he were a safe harbor. The two men exchanged glances, clearly recalculating their approach. given the mention of one of the region's most powerful businessmen. "The problem is simple," one of them said, adopting a more respectful tone. "Mr. Andrew has a debt with us that is already months overdue. We came to collect what is owed to us." "How much is the debt?" Arthur asked, placing a hand on Lucas's shoulder in a protective gesture. $7,000 with interest, the man replied. Arthur took out his wallet and extracted a wad of bills. "Here are 10,000. Consider the debt settled, with interest and an extra for the inconvenience. Now I ask you to leave and not bother this family again." The men took the money, surprised by the quick resolution of the situation. "Deal done," one of them said, counting the notes. "Mr. Andrew, it seems you found a good friend. You're lucky." After the collectors left, a heavy silence fell over the small room. Andrew Miller, a man of approximately 45 years old, but who appeared much older due to the visible signs of a difficult life, looked at Arthur with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. "Thank you," he finally said in a hoarse voice, "but I don't understand why you would do this for us." Lucas, still clinging to Arthur, intervened. "I met Mr. Arthur on my birthday, Dad. He's really nice. He took me to see his house. It's huge. It looks like a palace." Andrew frowned, looking from Lucas to Arthur with suspicion. "Your birthday?" "Lucas, you shouldn't walk around with strangers. We've talked about this. But Mr. Arthur isn't a stranger, Dad. He's my friend." Arthur placed the basket of provisions on the table and approached Andrew, extending his hand. "Mr. Miller, I understand your distrust. I met Lucas by chance when he approached me in Waterfront Park. We talked, he told me about your situation, and I decided to help. That's all." Andrew hesitated before shaking the extended hand, still suspicious. "You're Arthur Peterson, the owner of Peterson Construction?" "Yes, I am." A flash of recognition and then resentment passed through Andrew's eyes. "You don't remember me, do you?" "I worked for your company for 10 years. I was unjustly dismissed, accused of a theft I didn't commit." Arthur nodded gravely. "In fact, Mr. Miller, that's exactly why I'm here. I'm investigating your case. I believe a serious injustice may have occurred, and I want to correct it." Andrew's expression changed from distrust to surprise. "Investigating? After all this time?" "It's never too late to do what's right, Mr. Miller." Lucas, who had been observing the conversation between the two men with interest, tugged at Arthur's shirt sleeve. "Mr. Arthur, can I show you my drawings? I drew one of your house the way I remember it." Arthur smiled at the boy, grateful for the interruption that eased the tension of the moment. "Of course, Lucas. I'd love to see your drawings." While Lucas ran to fetch his drawings from a corner of the small dwelling, Arthur turned again to Andrew. "Mr. Miller, I know these must have been difficult years for you and your family. Losing your job unjustly, then losing your wife. I cannot change the past, but I can try to do something for the future. I am willing to help you if you allow me." Andrew looked at Arthur for a long moment, as if trying to decipher his intentions. "Why? Why now, after so long?" "Because your son made me see life differently. Lucas has a wisdom and kindness that touched me deeply, and also because I have reasons to believe that the injustice against you may have been perpetrated by someone in my own family. If that is the case, I have a moral obligation to correct this error." Before Andrew could respond, Lucas returned with several drawings in his hands, eager to show them to Arthur. The drawings, made with well-worn colored pencils, showed landscapes, people, and, as promised, an attempt to recreate Arthur's mansion, seen from a child's perspective. "You have a lot of talent." Lucas, Arthur praised, genuinely impressed by the boy's skill. "Thank you. The art teacher at school always says I draw well. I wish I had more colored pencils, but these are good enough." Arthur made a mental note to provide art materials for Lucas as soon as possible. Turning again to Andrew, who was observing the interaction between the two with an indecipherable expression, Arthur decided to be direct. "Mr. Miller, I would like to invite you and Lucas to spend a few days at my house. There we can talk calmly about your case and how I can help you. Also, I have trusted doctors who could examine you. Lucas mentioned that you haven't been feeling well lately." Andrew seemed to hesitate, torn between pride and practical need. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Peterson, but I cannot accept charity." "It's not charity, Mr. Miller. It's the least I can do given the possibility that my company committed a serious injustice against you. Besides, Lucas told me he wants to be an engineer when he grows up. I have many books and knowledge I could share with him. At the mention of his son's dream, something seemed to change in Andrew's expression. He looked at Lucas, who was eagerly awaiting his decision, and then back at Arthur. "May I think about it?" he finally asked. "Of course, take all the time you need. In the meantime, I'll leave my card here with my personal number. You can call me anytime. And I also brought some groceries and some clothes and toys that might fit Lucas." Andrew nodded, a little more relaxed, but still visibly uncomfortable with the situation. "Thank you." Arthur said goodbye to Lucas with an affectionate hug, promising to return soon, and left the small house with a mixture of emotions. The visit had confirmed his suspicions about the gravity of Andrew and Lucas's situation, but it had also reinforced his determination to help them, regardless of the consequences this might have for his own family. Upon returning home, Arthur found an unpleasant surprise awaiting him. His 3 children were gathered in the living room, with expressions ranging from concern to irritation. "Dad, we need to talk," Thomas announced, standing up as soon as Arthur entered the room. "We're worried about you." Arthur looked at his children one by one, realizing as never before the emotional distance that separated them. "Worried? That's new. You didn't worry about remembering my birthday, but now you're worried?" Vanessa, always the family diplomat, intervened. "Dad, we know we made a mistake by not giving your birthday due attention, and we apologize for that. But we are genuinely concerned about some decisions you've been making lately." "What decisions would those be, Vanessa?" Arthur asked, remaining calm but firm. "We heard you're investigating old company cases, questioning decisions that were made years ago," Thomas explained, visibly uncomfortable. "And we also heard that you're getting involved with people, let's say, questionable. If you're referring to Lucas and his father, Andrew Miller, they are not questionable people. They are victims of an injustice that, from all indications, was perpetrated by our own company." "By you, Thomas?" Thomas visibly paled. "I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. Andrew Miller's case was closed years ago. He was caught embezzling valuable materials from the warehouse. The evidence was conclusive." "What evidence, Thomas?" Arthur questioned, approaching his son. "Because the audit I'm conducting now is showing serious inconsistencies in the records. Material withdrawals authorized by Mark Davis, who worked directly for you without proper destination documentation." "That's absurd," Thomas exclaimed, but his tone of voice betrayed his nervousness. "You can't believe that kind of accusation based on old, possibly falsified records." Edward, who had been silently observing the discussion until then, intervened. "Dad, what Thomas is trying to say is that we're worried you might be manipulated by people who want to take advantage of your good faith. This boy and his father might be making up stories to get money or advantages." Arthur looked at his youngest son with an expression of deep disappointment. "Lucas is 6 years old, Edward. He didn't even know who I was when we met. And as for Andrew, he didn't even want to accept my help out of pride. I'm not being manipulated. I'm just finally seeing the truth." Vanessa, realizing the situation was escalating, tried a more conciliatory approach. "Dad, we understand that you may have grown fond of this boy, but to consider changing your will, starting an adoption process, don't you think these are very drastic decisions made very quickly?" Arthur turned to his daughter, surprised. "How do you know about this?" Thomas intervened. "Dr. Maurice called us concerned. He thought we should know your intentions before you made an irreversible decision." Arthur felt a wave of anger run through his body. "So Maurice betrayed my trust. It's interesting how you 3, who barely have time to call me on my birthday, suddenly mobilize when you feel your inheritance might be threatened. It's not like that." "Dad," Vanessa protested, but without much conviction. "It's not? Then tell me, when was the last time you came to visit me without asking for money or favors? When was the last time you genuinely worried about my well-being, and not about the company or what you could gain?" The 3 children fell silent, unable to answer. "That's what I thought," Arthur continued. "You're not worried about me. You're worried about the money you might lose if I decide to include Lucas in my will, or God forbid, adopt him." "Dad, you barely know this boy," Thomas exclaimed. "How can you consider adopting him?" "Because in 2 days, Lucas showed me more affection and consideration than the 3 of you in years, because he reminded me of what's truly important in life, and because, if my suspicions are correct, our family owes a great deal to him and his father." Thomas, visibly nervous, tried to change tactics. "Dad, let's be practical. What do you think the press will say if a 70-year-old businessman suddenly adopts a street kid? There will be speculation, unpleasant rumors. This could affect the company's reputation, the business. Arthur looked at his son with a mixture of disappointment and pity. So that's what worries you? The company's reputation? Not justice, not doing what's right, but how it will look to others. The company is our family's legacy, Dad, Thomas insisted. Everything you've built over decades. No, Thomas. The company is just a structure of concrete and papers. A person's true legacy is the values they convey, the good they do in the world. And I fear that in that aspect I have failed miserably with you. The silence that followed was heavy and laden with unspoken emotions. Finally, Arthur took a deep breath and continued, his voice calmer but no less determined. Listen, you are my children and always will be. Nothing will change that. But I am determined to correct the mistakes of the past, including my own. I will continue the investigation into Andrew Miller's case, and if it is proven that an injustice occurred, I will do everything in my power to remedy it. As for Lucas, yes, I am considering adopting him. Not to diminish you, but because I believe this boy deserves a chance, and I have the means to give it to him. The three children exchanged glances, realizing by the firmness in their father's voice that he would not easily change his mind. And what about the company? Thomas asked, worried. The company will continue to operate as always. You will remain in your positions, as long as you do your jobs correctly. But I'm considering a restructuring that includes more robust social programs, especially aimed at needy communities, like where Lucas lives. It's time for Peterson Construction to give back to society some of the much it has received from it. That will decrease profits, Thomas protested. Perhaps. But it will increase the positive impact we leave in the world, and that, to me, is worth much more than digits in a bank account. The family meeting ended without a clear resolution, but with the certainty that a new dynamic had been established. The three children left the mansion visibly shaken, while Arthur remained in the living room, with a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. For the first time in years, he felt he was acting according to his deepest values, not just following the inertia that had guided him for so long. In the following weeks, many things happened quickly. The internal audit revealed conclusive evidence that Thomas had orchestrated a scheme to embezzle company materials, framing Andrew Miller when he began to notice the irregularities. Confronted with the evidence, Thomas eventually confessed, claiming he had done it to impress an important client who demanded below-market prices. Arthur, deeply disappointed but determined to act with justice, decided not to report his son to the authorities, but demanded that he temporarily step away from the company to seek professional help. He also stipulated that Thomas should personally apologize to Andrew Miller and contribute significantly to a compensation fund that would be created in the former employee's name. As for Andrew, after much initial hesitation, he eventually accepted Arthur's invitation to temporarily move into a house on the property's grounds, along with Lucas. The man, still distrustful but sensing Arthur's sincerity and thinking of his son's well-being, agreed to undergo treatment for his health and alcoholism issues. Lucas, in turn, blossomed in the new situation, enrolled in a quality school with access to books, art materials, and, most importantly, Arthur's attention and affection. The boy showed even greater potential than the businessman had initially perceived. His sharp intelligence, creativity, and above all, his ability to see beauty in the simple things in life continued to impress Arthur daily. The adoption process, as expected, faced obstacles. Andrew, initially resistant to the idea of giving up custody of his son, gradually realized that he was unable to offer Lucas what Arthur could provide. After many sincere and painful conversations, Andrew agreed to the adoption, on the condition that he could remain present in his son's life. Arthur, understanding the importance of this bond, not only accepted, but encouraged the maintenance of the relationship between biological father and son. Andrew, now working again at Peterson Construction, but in an administrative position more suited to his skills, began to rebuild his life, finding new purpose and slowly regaining his self-esteem. Arthur's children, after initial resistance, reacted in different ways to the new reality. Thomas, facing the consequences of his past actions, began a painful process of self-reflection that gradually started to change his worldview. Vanessa, after initial indifference, eventually grew closer to Lucas during one of her visits to the United States, charmed by the boy's intelligence and sweetness. Edward, the youngest and perhaps the least hardened by life, was the first to genuinely accept Lucas, finding in the boy an enthusiasm for life that he himself had lost amidst comfort and lack of purpose. 6 months after the fortuitous encounter in Waterfront Park, Arthur's life had completely transformed. His mansion, once a cold and silent space, now echoed with Lucas's laughter, with meaningful conversations, with life. The long corridors that once seemed to lead nowhere now led to new beginnings, to unexplored possibilities. On a Sunday afternoon, while watching Lucas play on the beach in front of the mansion, accompanied by Andrew, who was slowly regaining not only his health, but also his dignity, Arthur reflected on the incredible journey he had experienced in recent months. How could a simple encounter change everything? How had a 6-year-old boy achieved what years of therapy and self-help could not? Make him see what truly mattered. At that moment, he felt a presence beside him and turned to find Mrs. Eleanor, who watched him with a knowing smile. "Mr. Arthur, I've never seen you so happy," the housekeeper commented. "I am happy, Eleanor. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm truly living, not just existing." "That boy was a blessing that entered your life," Arthur nodded, looking at Lucas, who waved enthusiastically from the seashore. "No, Eleanor, I entered his life. And that was the greatest blessing of all." As he walked across the sand to join Lucas and Andrew, Arthur reflected on the lessons he had learned. That true wealth was not in material possessions, but in the bonds we build. That it's never too late to start over, to correct mistakes, to open one's heart. And that sometimes we need to lose something to find what truly matters. Lucas ran towards him, his eyes bright and a smile that lit up his entire face. "Come on, Dad. Come see the sandcastle my other dad and I made." "Dad?" The word still sounded strange and wonderful to Arthur's ears, a title he had carried for decades, but whose true meaning he was only now beginning to understand. "I'm coming, son," he replied, feeling his heart fill with a pure and simple joy. As he joined Lucas and Andrew in building the sandcastle, Arthur thought about how life sometimes surprises us, how when we least expect it, a small gesture, a casual encounter can redeem us, transform us, save us, and how in the end what truly matters is not what we accumulate, but what we share. It's not how long we live, but how we live. It's not what we leave behind, but the love we sow along the way. The sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky in golden and orange hues, while 3 figures on the beach, an elderly man, a middle-aged man, and a boy, remained absorbed in building their castle, protected by the gentle tide that respected their creation, a simple yet deeply significant image of how destiny sometimes leads us down unexpected paths, only to show us that it was exactly where we were meant to be. Dear listeners, we hope Arthur and Lucas's story has touched your hearts. To follow more emotional journeys like this, we have prepared a special playlist with stories that explore the transformative power of human connections. Find it here by clicking on the left. If this narrative awakened something in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Also share in the comments which moment of the story moved you the most, or if you have ever had an experience that completely changed your perspective on life. Every day we bring new stories that make us reflect on the essential values of existence. And remember, just as Arthur discovered, it's never too late to start over and find the true meaning of life. We await you in the comments and from which city in the United States you are watching us.